The sleek, minimalist office on the 50th floor of the Archer Tower buzzed with the silent hum of power. Owen Archer, a man carved from ambition and custom-tailored suits, stared intently at his laptop screen. Millions. The deal with the new tech investors was practically a handshake away from netting him another fortune, solidifying his reign in the cutthroat world of New York finance. He ran a hand over the cool imported mahogany of his desk, a smirk playing on his lips as he reread the profit distribution clause. Just a final check, a signature, and the city would once again whisper his name with envy. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, an unwelcome intrusion. Owen scowled, glancing at the unfamiliar number. He loathed distractions, especially when on the cusp of victory. But a strange prickling sensation, an instinct he usually reserved for hostile takeovers, urged him to answer. "Owen Archer," he barked, his voice crisp, eyes still glued to the glowing screen. "Mr. Archer, this is Dr. Andrew Peterson from City General Hospital," a grave voice responded. Owen's focus snapped from the millions to the call. "It's about your father, Victor Archer Sr. He's been admitted. It looks like a severe stroke. You need to come as quickly as possible." Owen froze. His mind reeled. Stroke? His father? Victor Archer Sr. was a titan, a man who'd never shown a moment's weakness, who'd built their empire from scratch, as unshakable as the skyscrapers he'd financed. "A stroke? My father? That's not possible," he stammered, the words feeling alien in his mouth. This had to be a mistake, a cruel prank. "His condition is critical, Mr. Archer." Dr. Peterson's voice cut through his disbelief, firm and urgent. "He's in the ICU. If you want to speak with him, you should get here now." A cold dread seeped into Owen's bones. He slammed the laptop shut, the multi-million-dollar deal momentarily forgotten. Grabbing his phone, he shot up from his chair, his movements jerky, uncharacteristic. In the corridor, his sharp-featured assistant, Vicky, intercepted him. "Mr. Archer," she began, her perfectly plucked eyebrow arching at his tense expression. "You're 2:00 with the Henderson Group." "Cancel it, Vicky. Cancel everything for the next 2 days," he snapped, his voice raw. "But sir, the quarterly review." "I don't care." He cut her off, a tremor in his voice. "My father, he's in the hospital." Vicky's jaw dropped. She'd never seen Owen Archer, the Iceman of Wall Street, look so undone. He didn't wait for her response, already striding towards the private elevator, his fists clenched. As the doors whispered shut, he dragged a hand over his face, trying to regain composure. Panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Dad, you're too young for this. Don't you dare," he muttered into the oppressive silence of the descending car. The city blurred past as his driver sped through traffic, Owen oblivious to everything but the sickening knot in his stomach. The sterile scent of antiseptic assaulted Owen's nostrils as he stormed into City General's lobby, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The air thrummed with a hushed, anxious energy. He made a beeline for the information desk. "Dr. Andrew Peterson? Where can I find him?" he demanded of the startled nurse. "He's expecting you, Mr. Archer," the woman replied, her voice soft, pointing towards a door at the end of the long linoleum corridor. Owen covered the distance in a few long strides, barging into the small office where Dr. Peterson, a man with tired eyes and a compassionate demeanor, waited. "Mr. Archer, I'm afraid the news isn't good," the doctor began, his voice low, laced with a somber finality. "We've done everything we can, but I believe there's very little time left." Owen nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He didn't wait for permission, pushing past the doctor and into the dimly lit ICU room. There, amidst a symphony of beeping machines, lay Victor Archer Sr. pale, frail, a network of tubes tethering him to life. This man, who had always seemed invincible, now looked so fragile, so utterly human. "Come on, Dad," Owen whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's not your time. Don't you dare leave." He stumbled towards the bed, taking his father's cold, unresponsive hand in his. He looked into the clouded eyes, searching for a spark, any sign of the formidable man he knew. Victor Sr.'s lips moved, a faint raspy sound escaping. "Need to tell you. Dad, you need to be quiet. Save your strength. Fight this." Owen's voice trembled, his composure cracking despite his best efforts. But his father persisted, his gaze unfocused yet strangely intense. Mia. The name echoed in the sterile room, sending a jolt through Owen. Mia. The only woman he'd ever truly loved, the one who had vanished from his life years ago, without a trace. Why was his father mentioning her now, on his deathbed? Your mother and I, so guilty. Before you, Victor Sr. whispered, each word an agonizing effort. Owen's mind raced. Guilty? What are you talking about, Dad? What about Mia? Do you know something? Before Victor Sr. could answer, the monitors beside the bed erupted in a cacophony of shrill alarms. Nurses and doctors rushed in. You need to step out, Mr. Archer, a stern-faced nurse instructed, firmly guiding him towards the door. No, I have to know, Owen protested, but the door clicked shut in his face, sealing him off. Minutes stretched into an eternity. He paced the corridor, his gaze fixed on the frosted glass of the door, desperate for any sign. Finally, the door opened, and Dr. Peterson emerged, his face a mask of professional sorrow. We did everything we could, Mr. Archer. I'm so sorry. Owen froze. Time stopped. An icy coldness spread through his chest, numbing him. No, he whispered, the word barely audible. He sank onto a nearby chair, staring blankly at the polished floor, his head throbbing. Why Mia? What did his parents do? What secrets were they hiding? Just then, the sharp, rhythmic click of heels approached, a sound that grated on his already frayed nerves. Darling, what happened? Vicky called me. Veronica, his impeccably dressed wife, cooed, her eyes wide with feigned concern. Owen looked up, his own eyes hollow. He's gone, Veronica. He's dead. Veronica's meticulously sculpted expression shifted into one of practiced sorrow as she enveloped Owen in a cool, perfumed embrace. Oh, Owen, darling, I'm so sorry, she murmured, though her touch felt strangely detached. He allowed the embrace, too numb to react. As they walked slowly down the echoing hospital corridor, Veronica's voice, a constant low hum beside him, barely registered. It was all a blur. The sterile smells, the hushed voices, the crushing weight of his father's last cryptic words. Back in their opulent Manhattan penthouse, the silence was heavy, suffocating. Owen mechanically loosened his tie, the silk feeling like a noose around his neck, but the tightness in his chest remained. The day had passed in a daze. The white coats, the doctor's solemn pronouncements, and his father's final, haunting words. Mia, your mother and I. So guilty. He found himself in his study, the room a testament to his success, all dark wood and leather. He poured a generous measure of single malt whiskey into a crystal tumbler and sank into his favorite armchair, the amber liquid doing little to soothe the turmoil within. Memories flickered, Mia's infectious laughter, the warmth of her hand in his, the way her voice could make his heart skip a beat. She was the one who had seen beyond the driven businessman, the one who had awakened something real, something human in him. He'd loved her, desperately. And then she was gone, vanished. Damn it all, he breathed, taking a deep swig of the fiery scotch. The door creaked open and Veronica swept in, her heels clicking in assertive rhythm on the marble floor. Owen didn't even turn. He knew that perfectly coiffed silhouette, that expensive French perfume. Owen, darling, how are you holding up? Her voice was soft, a practiced caress, but devoid of genuine warmth. He gripped the glass tighter, a fresh wave of irritation washing over him. He knew her concern was a performance, a carefully constructed facade. Like a man who just lost his father, Veronica, he replied, his voice flat, weary. She settled into the chair opposite him, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. He resisted the urge to shrug it off. I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. But Owen, listen. What about your father's estate? The house in the Hamptons? Owen's head snapped up. He stared at her, incredulous. His father wasn't even cold, and she was already circling like a vulture, her eyes gleaming with avarice. He slowly placed his glass on the table, his gaze locking onto hers, cold and hard. Veronica, are you out of your damn mind? His voice was dangerously low, sharper than he intended. Can you, for once, not think about money? For as long as I've known you, it's always been about the damn dollar signs, never about people. Get out. Just get out and leave me with my thoughts." She blinked, clearly taken aback by his outburst, her perfectly painted lips trembling slightly. But Veronica Archer never backed down easily. She rose, her spine ramrod straight, a picture of affronted dignity, and silently glided out of the study, leaving Owen alone with his ghosts and the unanswered questions that clawed at his soul. Why Mia? What was the guilt his father spoke of, and why did his mother share it? The solitude of his study offered no comfort. Owen swirled the remaining whiskey in his glass, the amber liquid catching the dim light, but the desire to drink had vanished. His thoughts, a relentless vortex, kept pulling him back to Mia. Why, after all these years, had his father uttered her name with such profound regret? What dark secret connected Mia to his family? A secret his mother was apparently privy to. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen, scrolling through his contacts until he found it. Sophia. Mia's best friend, the last link he had to her past. He hadn't tried calling Sophia in years, not since his initial desperate attempts to find Mia had met a wall of polite but firm refusals. But tonight, the gnawing uncertainty was unbearable. The phone rang once, twice, a third time. He almost hung up. "Owen?" Sophia's voice, when it finally came, was laced with surprise, a hint of suspicion, and a clear note of unwelcome. "Sophia, it's Owen Archer. We need to talk," he said, his tone firm, leaving no room for argument. "It's important." A heavy silence hung on the line, punctuated only by her soft, hesitant breath. Then, a sigh, weary and resigned. "Owen, you know I have nothing to say to you, not after all this time." "This is about Mia," he pressed, "and my family. I need answers, Sophia. My father, he said things before he died." Another pause, longer this time. He could almost hear the conflict in her silence. "You know I told you everything I could back then," she finally replied, her voice guarded. "There's nothing more to add, Owen. Mia made her choices." "But what choices? Why did she leave? Was she in some kind of trouble?" he pleaded, the desperation seeping into his voice. "I can't help you, Owen. Please, just let it go." The line went dead. He slammed the phone down on the desk, frustration coiling in his gut. For so many years, he'd been met with silence, with evasions. The mystery of Mia's disappearance was a wound that had never truly healed, and now his father's words had torn it wide open. The next day was a blur of forced pleasantries and grim practicalities. Owen threw himself into organizing the funeral, a macabre distraction. Work, his usual refuge, offered no solace. Every spreadsheet, every market report seemed to morph into Mia's smiling face, her laughing eyes. He found himself staring out the window of his office, not seeing the Manhattan skyline, but replaying memories of her, the phantom touch of her hand, the echo of her voice. The door to his office opened, and Veronica entered, her expression a carefully crafted mask of concern. "You've been cooped up in here all day, Owen," she said, leaning against the door jamb. "You need to rest. You look terrible." "I need to arrange my father's funeral," he replied curtly, not even bothering to look at her. "I understand, darling, but you haven't eaten. You barely slept." She glided closer, her perfume usually a scent he tolerated, now cloying and intrusive. Owen clenched his jaw, trying to suppress the rising tide of irritation. "Veronica, if you've come to talk about my father's assets again, or his condition as you so delicately put it, you can save your breath and leave." She sighed, a theatrical display of exasperation, and moved around his desk, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm worried about you, Owen. I'm your wife. Let me help." He remained rigid, her touch feeling like a brand. This charade of concern was almost unbearable. He'd long since stopped believing in Veronica's sincerity. "And what exactly can you do?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Just leave me alone, Veronica. Please." Her brow furrowed, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. After a moment's tense silence, she turned on her heel and stalked out, closing the door with a little more force than necessary. Owen closed his eyes, the image of Mia, young and vibrant, swimming before him. The funeral was tomorrow. His father would be laid to rest, and he was no closer to understanding the secrets that lay buried with him. The day of the funeral dawned gray and somber, low-slung clouds blanketing the sky like a heavy shroud. The weather seemed to mirror the oppressive weight in Owen's chest. He stood by his father's graveside, his gaze distant, fixed on some indeterminate point beyond the manicured lawns of the cemetery. He didn't feel acute grief, not the stabbing pain he'd expected, but rather a profound, hollowing emptiness, as if a vital part of his own foundation had crumbled away. What now? How was he supposed to navigate this new, uncertain landscape of his life? The fear of the unknown, of changes he couldn't control, coiled around him. Veronica stood beside him, her gloved hand clutching his arm, but her eyes were cold, detached. He could almost hear the whirring of a calculator in her head as she assessed the gathered mourners, no doubt tallying potential business connections even here. He felt her presence as a physical weight, yet her soul seemed miles away. "It was a beautiful service," she murmured, her voice a perfectly modulated whisper, full of the right sentiment but lacking any genuine warmth. Owen merely grunted in response. "If you want, I can help with some of the arrangements afterwards," she offered, as if they were discussing a corporate merger, rather than the aftermath of his father's death. "You know, Victor Sr. left behind a considerable number of affairs that need to be settled. Time is money, darling." "Is that all you ever think about, Veronica? Money?" Owen hissed, his voice low and venomous, turning to look directly at her. "Darling," she replied, her smile tight, "it's what makes the world go round. If it weren't for my persistence, you might not be where you are today. Remember how I practically dragged you into your father's business, convinced you to listen to him?" Owen bit back a retort, feeling the sharp sting of her words. He hadn't even begun to process his loss, and she was already fixated on the financial fallout. The crowd of distant relatives and business associates stood a respectful distance away, their hushed whispers a dull murmur. His father's old cronies, men who had once been titans of industry, now seemed frail and out of place. He wanted none of them, none of their condolences. The unease was growing, his father's last words replaying in his mind like a broken record. As the service concluded and people began to disperse, Owen turned, ready to leave the oppressive atmosphere of the cemetery. But something made him pause. His gaze swept across the mourners, then drifted towards a far corner, near an ancient oak tree. A lone figure stood there, a woman dressed in a simple black dress and a headscarf, her posture still, almost statuesque. She wasn't moving, as if waiting for his gaze to find her. There was something unnervingly familiar about her silhouette, her stance. He couldn't see her face clearly, it was obscured by dark sunglasses and the shadows of the tree. A sudden, inexplicable quickening of his heart, a strange premonition, as if he were being watched, judged. "Owen? Who is that?" Veronica's sharp voice cut through his thoughts, her grip tightening on his arm. She followed his gaze, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. He dragged his eyes back to his wife, but the unsettling feeling lingered. "No one. Just thought I saw someone I knew," he mumbled, his voice unconvincing even to his own ears. He glanced back. The woman was gone, vanished like a wisp of smoke. But the disquiet remained, a knot in his stomach. "Are you sure?" Veronica pressed, her tone less concerned and more like an interrogator trying to ensure no unexpected variable threatened her carefully laid plans. "Yes, just my imagination," he reiterated, but a seed of doubt had been planted. That fleeting glimpse hadn't felt random. Too many questions, too many shadows clouded his life. "You seem agitated," Veronica observed, her eyes like chips of ice. "It's just a ceremony, Owen. Everything will be fine. You haven't forgotten about the paperwork, the business side of things, have you?" Owen sighed, his gaze drifting to the horizon. He couldn't shake the image of the mysterious woman, her silent vigil. But Veronica was there, a constant, demanding presence, pulling him back to her world of spreadsheets and bottom lines. "Yes, of course," he replied, the weariness in his voice unmistakable. Time crawled by, the initial shock of his father's death slowly giving way to a dull, persistent ache, Owen tried to lose himself in work meetings, conference calls, market analyses, but in the quiet solitude of the nights, his thoughts inevitably returned to that hospital room, to his father's cryptic last words, and to the woman he could never forget. Mia. Her name, her face, were etched into his consciousness. At first he dismissed it as a trick of grief-stricken memory, but her image began to surface with increasing, haunting frequency. He'd catch himself scanning faces in crowded Manhattan streets, a foolish, desperate hope flickering within him. And then came the nightmares. Darkness. A biting, cold wind howled around him, whipping snow into his face. Owen stood in the middle of a vast, empty, snow-covered field. Desolation stretched as far as the eye could see. He took a hesitant step forward, and then he heard it, a whisper, a woman's voice, faint but achingly familiar. "Owen?" He spun around. There she was, the woman from the funeral in her black dress and scarf, her face shrouded in shadow. Yet his heart pounded. He knew her. "Who are you?" he choked out, his voice trembling. She didn't answer, only glided closer. Suddenly the snow beneath her feet turned dark, and Owen realized with a sickening lurch it wasn't snow at all, but cold, dead earth. "Why did you forget me?" Her voice grew louder, sharper, laced with an unbearable accusation. Owen recoiled. The ground beneath him began to crack, fissures spreading like dark veins. Skeletal hands, cold and grasping, clawed their way up from the earth, snatching at his ankles, his arms, dragging him down. "No!" he screamed, struggling against the unholy grip. The woman loomed over him. In the last, terrifying moment before the darkness consumed him, he saw her face clearly. His heart seized. It was her. Mia. His first, his only true love. Her eyes, once so full of light, now brimmed with pain and reproach. "Mia! Mia!" And then blackness. Owen bolted upright in bed, gasping for air, his body drenched in cold sweat. His heart hammered against his ribs as if trying to escape. The luxurious bedroom was dark, silent save for his ragged breathing. "Owen, you okay?" Veronica's sleepy voice mumbled beside him. She turned over, propping herself on an elbow, her perfectly maintained blonde hair slightly mussed. She ran a languid hand over his shoulder. "Bad dream?" "Yeah," he exhaled, trying to slow his racing pulse. "Just a nightmare." Go back to sleep," she yawned, murmured something unintelligible, and was instantly asleep again, her breathing deep and even. Owen, however, knew sleep was impossible. He gently disentangled himself from the covers, pulled on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt, laced up his running shoes, and slipped out into the pre-dawn stillness of their penthouse. The night air on the deserted streets was cool, a welcome contrast to the suffocating dread of his dream. He plugged in his earbuds, the driving beat of a rock anthem a poor attempt to drown out the turmoil in his head. Mile after mile he pushed himself, hoping the physical exertion would purge the terrifying images. But Mia's face, her accusing eyes, remained seared into his mind. After a long, punishing run and an even longer shower, the knot of anxiety in his stomach hadn't loosened. Descending to the breakfast room, he found Veronica already there, impeccably dressed, calmly sipping her artisanal coffee. She looked fresh, composed, as if her morning had been the epitome of serene perfection. Owen poured himself a black coffee, the silence between them thick and heavy. He felt her gaze on him, but kept his own fixed on the swirling liquid in his cup. The silence, however, was short-lived. "Darling," Veronica began, her voice deceptively casual as she stirred her coffee with a delicate silver spoon. "Who is Mia?" Owen froze. The clatter of his knife dropping onto his porcelain plate was deafening in the sudden stillness. His fingers, moments ago steady, now trembled. He slowly raised his eyes to meet hers. "What?" His voice was a dry rasp, unfamiliar even to himself. "Mia," she repeated coolly, her eyes, sharp and observant, missing nothing. "You were calling her name in your sleep. Several times, actually." Owen's jaw tightened. He fought to maintain a veneer of nonchalance, but his heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He couldn't let her see his agitation. "What are you talking about, Veronica?" he managed, attempting a tone of mild surprise. "I was dreaming some nonsense, that's all." Veronica's lips curved into a slight, knowing smirk. She took another sip of coffee. "Nonsense, Owen. You weren't just mumbling, you were calling for her. Desperately. He took a slow, deliberate breath, leaned down, and retrieved the fallen knife. His hands were steady now, but inside, a storm raged. You must have misheard, he said, his voice even. It's just a random name, I don't even remember the dream. Veronica chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent a shiver down his spine. Really? That's strange, because for a random name, you looked rather shattered when I just said it. Owen felt a surge of anger. She was always too perceptive, too quick to pounce on any perceived weakness. He glanced at his Patek Philippe. I have to go, he said abruptly, avoiding her gaze. Important meeting this morning? Veronica nodded, but her eyes glinted with cold, calculating interest. Of course, darling. But you know, if you ever do remember who this Mia is, do tell. I'm terribly curious. Owen clenched his fists, but said nothing. He turned and strode out of the breakfast room, her mocking gaze burning into his back. This was getting out of control. Minutes later, Owen was in his car, but instead of heading towards the gleaming skyscrapers of Wall Street, he found himself inexplicably turning the vehicle towards the cemetery. His mind was a chaotic whirlwind of emotions. Mia's name, uttered first by his dying father and now by his suspicious wife, echoed relentlessly in his head. Mia, he whispered, the name a bittersweet ache on his tongue after years of unspoken longing. The cemetery was quiet, a peaceful oasis amidst the city's relentless hum. Only the rustle of wind through the autumn leaves broke the silence. As he approached his father's grave, a small figure caught his eye. A child, no older than 5, was crouched down, intently examining the granite headstone. Owen frowned. Who was this boy, and what was he doing here alone? The child looked up, his wide, innocent eyes meeting Owen's. Excuse me, he whispered, his voice small but clear. I just wanted to visit my grandpa. Owen's world tilted. Grandpa? His voice was hoarse, barely a breath. Who told you this was your grandpa? Mommy did, the boy replied with disarming honesty, his gaze unwavering. A cold dread, mixed with a wild, impossible hope, clenched Owen's heart. And what's your mommy's name? He managed to ask, his breath catching in his throat. The boy smiled, a bright, unclouded grin. Mia, she's really pretty. The ground seemed to sway beneath Owen's feet. Mia, the name that had haunted his dreams, that had been whispered on his father's dying breath, now uttered by this small child. It was too much. The pieces of a puzzle he hadn't even known existed were violently slotting into place. Mia? He repeated, needing to hear it again, to be sure he wasn't hallucinating. Yep, and I'm Leo, the boy chirped, his eyes alight with simple, childlike curiosity. What's your name? Owen's lips formed his own name, but his mind was light years away, reeling from the revelation. Leo, where's your mom now? Why are you here alone? Leo's bright expression clouded slightly. Mommy's working. She works a lot so we can buy groceries. He looked down at his scuffed sneakers. She's not supposed to know I came here again. Owen swallowed hard, the lump in his throat constricting his airway. Again? He'd been here before? How many times had this child stood before Victor Archer's grave, talking to the grandfather Owen hadn't known he had? Leo, Owen began, his voice thick with emotion. How about I walk you home? The boy hesitated. But Mommy says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Then after a moment's thought, he added, But you don't look scary. I bet Mommy wouldn't be scared of you. A ghost of a smile touched Owen's lips. I'm an old friend of your mom's, Leo. I'm sure she'll be happy to see me. Leo nodded, his trust absolute and instantaneous. They started along the narrow path leading out of the cemetery. Where's your daddy? Owen asked gently, bracing himself. He died on a special mission, Leo said, a note of pride in his small voice. He was a soldier. I see. The words stuck in Owen's throat. He looked down, a painful, dawning realization tightening its grip on him. And how old are you, Leo? I'm gonna be 5 soon, the boy announced, beaming, oblivious to the turmoil raging within the man beside him. 5 years. Owen's mind raced, calculating. The dates, the timelines. It all aligned with a sickening, shocking precision. Leo was his son. But why had Mia never told him? Why had she hidden his child from him for all these years? When Owen walked Leo to the modest apartment building where he lived, the boy stopped at the entrance, looking up at him with a newfound hesitancy. "You should probably go now," Leo whispered, his earlier confidence wavering. "Mommy really shouldn't know I was at the cemetery again." But Owen had made his decision. He couldn't just turn around and walk away. Not now, not with the truth staring him in the face. He needed answers. As if summoned by his thoughts, a woman emerged from the building's doorway, her expression shifting from surprise to a guarded, wary look as she saw Owen. "Sophia." Owen's voice was a low rumble, thick with unspoken accusations. "You told me you didn't know where Mia was." Sophia sighed, a weary sound, and crossed her arms over her chest. "Look, Owen, you brought this on yourself. I don't want to get involved in your drama." "Please, just give this to Mia," Owen said, his voice urgent as he pulled a business card from his wallet and extended it to her. "Tell her to call me. We have a lot to talk about." Sophia hesitated, her eyes flickering towards Leo, then back to Owen. Reluctantly, she took the card and slipped it into her pocket. Just then, her gaze sharpened on Leo. "Leo, didn't your mom tell you not to talk to strangers?" she admonished, her tone firm but not unkind. The boy shuffled his feet. "Aunt Sophia, please don't be mad," he pleaded. "This is Owen. He's Mommy's old friend." Sophia froze for a beat, her expression unreadable. Then she gently took Leo's hand. "We need to get you inside, little man. Come on." She gave Owen a curt nod, a silent dismissal, and then disappeared with Leo into the dim lobby of the building. Owen stood rooted to the spot, watching the door swing shut behind them. He took a deep, shuddering breath. This conversation was just the beginning of something far bigger, far more complicated than he could have imagined. He walked back to his car, his mind a maelstrom. Sinking into the driver's seat, he didn't immediately start the engine. He ran a hand over his face, trying to process the monumental revelation. "Leo, he's almost 5. A sharp exhale. It all fit. The timing of Mia's disappearance. She could have been pregnant then. "Damn it," he swore, slamming his fist against the steering wheel. A wave of desolation, swiftly followed by a surge of anger, washed over him. Why hadn't Mia told him? Why had she kept their child a secret? And Sophia? Why the lies? He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that only Mia could provide the answers he so desperately needed. His phone buzzed, shattering his turbulent thoughts. Veronica's name flashed on the screen. Owen gritted his teeth. He couldn't deal with her now, not with his world imploding. But the ringing persisted, insistent, demanding. "Yes," he answered, forcing his voice into a semblance of calm. "Owen, where are you?" Veronica's voice was sharp, laced with irritation. "The meeting ended hours ago. You weren't there. What in the world is going on?" "I had urgent business to attend to," he replied curtly. "What urgent business, Owen? You're becoming distant again. We just buried your father and now you're vanishing without a word. I don't like this, Owen, not one bit." He closed his eyes, battling the urge to lash out. "Veronica, I'll deal with my affairs. Let's talk later." "Oh, no, you don't. I don't appreciate this attitude," she snapped. But he'd already ended the call. He started the car, pulling out into the sparse afternoon traffic. Thoughts of Leo consumed him, the boy's bright smile, the proud way he spoke of his mother, and Mia, her name, a painful, persistent echo. He drove aimlessly for a while, passing his own street several times before finally summoning the will to go home, to face the inevitable confrontation he knew awaited him. Owen finally parked his car and walked towards the imposing entrance of his penthouse. The dread was a cold knot in his stomach. Inside, the living room lights were on, casting long shadows. Veronica was waiting, perched on the edge of the designer sofa, a glass of white wine in her hand, her posture radiating disapproval. "You look like hell," she observed, her eyes raking over him with a critical, assessing gaze. "What happened, Owen?" He bypassed her without a word, shedding his jacket and tossing it onto a nearby armchair. He wasn't ready for this interrogation. Not yet. "Not now, Veronica. I'm just tired," he muttered, heading for the bar. Oh, don't give me that cheap excuse, Owen, she snapped, her voice rising. I can see something's eating you alive. You didn't even come home for dinner. He sighed, pouring himself a stiff drink, and turned to face her, rubbing his temples. Veronica, I really don't want to talk about this right now. Is this about your father? Or… She paused, her eyes narrowing as she watched his reaction intently. Is it about that… Mia… you were calling out for in your sleep? Owen's head shot up. Are you back on that again? Yes, Owen, I am. Who is Mia? Veronica leaned forward, her perfectly painted lips set in a determined line, her gaze unwavering. He knew if he told her even a fraction of the truth, this night would devolve into an endless inquisition. But lying… he was so tired of the lies, the secrets. She's… He hesitated, searching for the right words. Someone from my past, Veronica. A long time ago. Veronica let out a short, sharp laugh, a humorless sound. She took a delicate sip of her wine. From your reaction, Owen, it sounds like she's still very much in your present. So, who is she? An old flame the great Owen Archer never quite extinguished? Owen stood up, the glass heavy in his hand. I'm going to bed. Run, Owen, run! She called after him, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He didn't look back. Sleep, he knew, would be elusive. The truth about Mia, about Leo, was a ticking bomb, and he had to defuse it, no matter how painful the fallout. Meanwhile, across town, Mia returned home from a long shift at the diner, exhaustion etched on her face. Sophia, her ever-reliable friend, was there, having already tucked Leo into bed. Soph, you're a lifesaver. Thank you again, Mia said, sinking onto the worn sofa and pulling her friend into a grateful hug. Hey, no problem, but you better sit down for this. I've got some… news, Sophia said, pouring Mia a cup of chamomile tea. What happened? Mia asked, instantly alert, sensing the gravity in her friend's tone. Okay, so I'm coming back from the store this afternoon, Sophia began. And who do I see standing outside with your son? A man, a very familiar man. Oh God, Leo, how many times have I told him about talking to strangers? He's going to get a serious talking to tomorrow, Mia exclaimed, her frustration mounting. That's not even the half of it, Mia. Sophia reached into her pocket and pulled out Owen Archer's business card, placing it on the coffee table between them. This man, he gave me this. He wants you to call him. Mia stared at the card as if it were a venomous snake. No, it can't be. She buried her face in her hands. How, in this massive city, did they even manage to meet? Your son was at the cemetery again, Mia, Sophia said gently but firmly. That's where they met. Why am I always stumbling into these messes? Mia whispered, her voice raw with despair. Look, you're the one who decided to tell Leo where his grandfather was buried. It was bound to happen eventually, even if it was accidental how it slipped out, Sophia reminded her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. At least now, you're being honest with yourself in a way. Mia took a shaky breath. And Owen? What am I supposed to do about him? Do you think… should I tell him the truth? He doesn't deserve this, does he? Mia, honey, I don't know. It's been so many years, but dragging up the past, are you sure you want to do that? Sophia squeezed her shoulder. Whatever you decide, just don't have any regrets later. The next day, a strange compulsion drove Owen back to the neighborhood where Mia and Leo lived. He couldn't shake the image of his son, couldn't stop the conflicting emotions churning within him. An incredible joy at discovering Leo, and a bitter resentment that he'd been kept in the dark for so long. As he pulled up to the curb, he saw Leo playing street hockey with a group of friends. The boy's face lit up when he spotted Owen's car, and he immediately ran over, his smile radiant. Mr. Owen, you came back, he exclaimed, his breath misting in the cool air. Owen managed to smile, his heart aching. He got out of the car and sat on a low retaining wall. I promised we'd see each other again, didn't I, Leo? How's your day? Awesome. We were just playing hockey. Then I was going to ask Aunt Sophia for some hot chocolate, but she had to go out. Leo's face fell for a moment, then brightened again. Do you want some tea, Mr. Owen? Owen chuckled despite himself. Leo, I'm not sure your mom would be too happy to find me in your apartment. But we can just have it in the kitchen before she gets back, Leo proposed, clapping his hands, already tugging Owen towards the building entrance. Owen hesitated for only a moment before allowing himself to be led. Inside, the apartment was small but clean, filled with a warmth and coziness that was starkly different from his own sterile penthouse. Leo proudly ushered him to the kitchen table, retrieved 2 mugs from a cupboard, and filled the kettle. "You know how to make tea?" Owen asked, genuinely surprised. "Sure, Aunt Sophia taught me. Mommy works late a lot so I can take care of myself," Leo announced with a proud grin. Owen felt a pang in his chest. His son, growing up without him, managing on his own. Was it pride he felt, or a deep, shameful guilt? Just then, the sound of a key turning in the front door lock echoed through the apartment. Mia was home. Hearing voices in the kitchen, she froze, her heart instantly hammering. This couldn't be. Slowly, cautiously, she moved down the hallway. "Mommy!" Leo cried, rushing to hug her as she appeared in the kitchen doorway. Mia hugged her son tightly, her eyes fixed on Owen, her lips trembling. "Leo," she said, her voice strained. "Why did you bring a stranger into our home?" She couldn't tear her gaze from Owen. "But Mommy, Mr. Owen said he's your old friend," Leo chirped happily. "And look, he bought a cake for tea." Mia's gaze flickered to the bakery box on the table. Her fingers tightened on Leo's shoulders. "Sweetheart, why don't you go to your room for a little while? Mr. Owen and I need to talk." Leo, sensing the tension, nodded and dutifully scampered off. Mia walked slowly to the window, her back to Owen, arms crossed tightly against her chest, as if to hold herself together. The silence in the small kitchen crackled with unspoken words, with years of pain and secrets. "Why are you here, Owen?" she finally asked, her voice a low, cold whisper, devoid of its former warmth. Yet beneath the ice, he could sense a maelstrom of emotions. "I want to know the truth, Mia." "All of it," Owen said, his own voice hoarse. He rose from the table and took a hesitant step towards her. "The truth?" She let out a bitter, shaky laugh. "Oh God, Owen, what truth are you even looking for?" She bit her lip, her composure threatening to crumble, but she held firm, her defenses still up. "Leo, he's my son, isn't he?" Mia's shoulders tensed. She nervously picked at a loose thread on her sweater sleeve. "What makes you say that?" "He was at my father's grave, Mia. He said Victor Archer was his grandfather." Owen watched her closely, cataloging every flicker of emotion that crossed her face, every subtle shift in her posture. "I told him not to go there," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. "You misunderstood. My own father is buried nearby. Leo must have gotten confused." Owen's patience snapped. "Are you serious, Mia? Do you really expect me to believe that?" His voice rose, sharper now. "We have nothing to talk about, Owen. You should leave." Her voice was flat, final. He stared at her, at the rigid line of her back, the stubborn set of her jaw. Then, acting on an impulse he didn't understand, he closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He gently took her face in his hands, his thumbs caressing her cheekbones, and leaned down, his lips finding hers. For a heart-stopping moment, Mia froze, her body rigid, her mind reeling. Then, as if a dam had broken, a wave of long-suppressed emotions, longing, anger, regret, washed over her. His lips were as warm, as familiar as they were in her most cherished, most painful memories. But the dreamlike state lasted only an instant. With a choked sob, she pushed him away, stumbling back a step. How long have I been looking for you?" Owen whispered, his eyes searching hers, pleading for an answer, for a sign. A bitter, humorless smile twisted Mia's lips. "Oh really, Owen? Did your parents forget to mention that your precious Veronica cornered me, beat me when I was pregnant with your child?" Owen went pale, the blood draining from his face. "What are you saying? They wanted to get rid of me, Owen, at any cost." Mia's voice trembled with a furious resurrected pain. "They offered me money, a fortune to disappear, to take care of the problem. And when they realized not everyone has a price tag, Veronica took matters into her own hands." Her fists clenched, her knuckles white. "I was coming home late from the library. She was waiting for me, with her friends." Mia's voice broke, the horrific memory threatening to overwhelm her. Owen felt a wave of nausea. He could picture it. Veronica's cruel, vindictive face. In the hospital, Mia continued, her voice hollow. After the assault, when your parents found out I was still pregnant, they came again. More money. They wanted me to get an abortion, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I took what little I had and I left. I ran. Owen reached for her hand, but she snatched it away as if burned. Mia, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. You need to disappear from our lives, Owen, she said, her voice shaking with a potent mix of anger and pain. Never come back. If you harass us, I'll go to the police. I swear I will. But Leo, he's my son. I want to be part of his life, Mia. He swallowed. The depth of her suffering, the years of her struggle, hitting him with the force of a physical blow. All these years, I never stopped loving you, Mia. I had no idea what they put you through. Please, just give me a chance to make things right. Mia stared at him, a long, searching look. Her eyes, pools of raw emotion, reflected a maelstrom of pain, fury, fear, and something else. Something fragile. Something Owen was terrified of losing forever. Just then, Leo tiptoed back into the kitchen, his small face alight with a child's innocent curiosity. He looked from Owen to his mother, his brow furrowed as he tried to decipher the heavy atmosphere. Then, as if a missing piece of a puzzle had finally clicked into place in his young mind, his eyes widened. "Mommy?" he whispered, his voice trembling with dawning realization. Is Owen my daddy?" Mia froze, the color draining from her face. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden charged silence. She looked at Owen, his face a mask of hope and apprehension, then down at her son, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and burgeoning excitement. How could she deny him this after all these years? The secret she had guarded so fiercely for so long was out. The truth, raw and undeniable, hung in the air between them. "Yes, sweetie," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible as she took a small, hesitant step towards Leo. "Owen is your father." "Hooray, I have a daddy, I have a daddy!" Leo shrieked with pure, unadulterated joy. He launched himself at Owen, a small, ecstatic missile. Owen caught him instinctively, lifting him high, pressing the boy tightly against his chest, a wave of overwhelming emotion washing over him. This was real. This was his son. Mia turned away, her shoulders shaking, trying to hide the tears that streamed down her face. It felt as if the ground had been ripped out from under her. For 5 long years, she had protected Leo from this truth, terrified that Owen would break his heart, just as he had once, unknowingly, broken hers. "I promise you both," Owen said softly, his gaze fixed on Mia over Leo's small shoulder. "I will make this right. I swear it." She looked at him then, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "Make it right?" she repeated, a bitter edge to her voice. "Owen, do you even understand what that means? It's not just about waltzing into a child's life and announcing, 'Hi, I'm your dad.' It's about responsibility, consistency, support. It's about being there." "I know," Owen nodded, his grip on Leo tightening almost imperceptibly. "And I'm ready. I'm ready for all of it." "Ready?" Mia let out a hollow laugh, shaking her head. "Where were you all these years, Owen? When I was raising him alone? Where were you when he needed medicine in the middle of the night? When he was sick? When he cried because he didn't have a father like the other kids?" Owen gritted his teeth, the weight of her accusations crushing him. There were no words, no excuses that could undo the past, but he could fight for their future. "I know I can't change what happened," he said, his voice thick with remorse. "But please, Mia, let me try. Let me prove to you, to both of you, that I can be the father Leo deserves, the partner you deserve." Leo looked from his mother to Owen, his small face a canvas of confusion and hope. "Mommy, aren't you happy I have a daddy?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. Mia closed her eyes, the pain of her son's innocent question piercing her heart. How could she deny him this happiness, this fundamental right? I'm just scared, baby," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Scared you'll get hurt." "I won't," Leo insisted, hugging Owen tighter. "Please, Mommy, I've wanted a daddy for so long. Can we at least try?" Her chest ached. She knew with a sinking finality that this moment was inevitable. But the fear of Owen disappearing again, of inflicting more pain, was a powerful deterrent. "All right," she conceded, her voice barely a whisper. "We can try. But Owen," she looked him directly in the eye, her gaze unwavering, "if you break his heart, if you ever hurt him, I will never forgive you." He nodded solemnly. "I won't leave Mia, not again, not from you, not from Leo." Leo's face split into a wide grin. Before either adult could react, he grabbed Owen's hand. "Dad, will you teach me how to play football? Like, for real?" A warmth spread through Owen's chest, chasing away some of the shadows. "Of course, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Anything you want." Mia watched them, a fragile hope blossoming amidst the ruins of her past. Everything was about to change. Whether for better or worse, only time would tell. When Owen returned to his penthouse, the air was thick with an unspoken tension. Veronica, sensing a shift, a finality she couldn't quite decipher, met him at the door, her perfectly arched eyebrows raised in a silent question, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. "Where have you been all day?" she demanded, her voice clipped, her arms crossed over her chest. Owen walked past her without a word, tossing his jacket onto a chair. He strode into the vast living room, his face a grim mask, his fists clenched, a storm brewing in his eyes. He turned to face her, his gaze like chips of ice. "I never knew you could be such a vile, despicable creature, Veronica." She froze, then let out a brittle, theatrical laugh. "Watch your tongue, Owen. And what on earth are you babbling about?" Her voice quavered slightly, despite her attempt at bravado. "I'm talking about Mia. About you beating her when she was pregnant with my child." He slammed his hand on the marble mantelpiece, the sound echoing through the silent room. "You were so obsessed with me, so desperate to have me, you decided to destroy the one person I ever truly loved." Veronica's face contorted with rage. "Don't you dare accuse me of things I didn't do!" she shrieked, rushing towards him, her heels clicking furiously on the polished floor. "Who told you this? That lying little tramp? You believed her? She's manipulating you, Owen. Can't you see?" "Enough!" Owen roared, his voice thundering off the high ceilings. "Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I don't see you for what you truly are? I lived with you, Veronica, but I never truly knew the depths of your cruelty." She moved closer, her face pale, a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. "Owen, what are you going to do?" Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "You have 1 hour, Veronica," he said, his voice cold, devoid of any emotion. 1 hour to pack your things and get out of my house, out of my life." His words struck her like a physical blow. "You can't do this to me," she wailed, her carefully constructed composure shattering. Owen grabbed a heavy crystal whiskey decanter from the bar and hurled it against the far wall. It exploded in a shower of glittering shards. Veronica flinched violently. "Get out! I hate you! Get out of my sight!" His voice was raw, shaking with suppressed fury. She stumbled back, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. "You'll regret this, Owen Archer," she spat, her voice venomous, before turning and fleeing the room. Owen stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving. He had finally done it. Veronica and her poison were gone from his life. Now, everything would change. He walked to the window, looking out at the glittering cityscape. His mind was already racing, planning the move, imagining Mia and Leo in this house. He took a deep breath and slowly surveyed his son's future room, a spacious, bright area. "Everything needs to be perfect," he murmured, picturing Leo's toys, his books, his laughter filling the empty spaces. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Owen, driven by a newfound purpose, oversaw the transformation of a large, sun-filled room into a haven for Leo. He personally supervised painters as they applied a cheerful sky-blue coat to the walls. Furniture was delivered. A sturdy desk for homework he hoped they'd one day do together. A cozy bed shaped like a race car. And bookshelves already partially filled with adventure stories and dinosaur encyclopedias. He knelt on the plush new carpet, a soft landscape of blues and greens, imagining Leo sprawled out, lost in a book. He added a cool astronaut-themed lamp and a constellation projector for the ceiling. When it was all done, he stepped back, a profound sense of satisfaction washing over him. This room, he hoped, would be more than just a space. It would be a sanctuary, a place of joy and security for the son he was only just getting to know. Finally, the day arrived. Owen stood at the grand entrance of his penthouse, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As Mia and Leo approached, their expressions a blend of nervousness and hesitant anticipation. He swung the heavy oak door wide. "Welcome home," he said, his voice warm, genuine. Leo was the first to step inside, his eyes wide as saucers as he took in the soaring ceilings, the sweeping staircase, and the enormous chandelier that glittered like 1,000 captive stars. "Whoa," he breathed, spinning around to face his mother. "Mommy, did you see this? It's like a castle." Mia managed a faint, shy smile, her gaze soft as she watched her son, a tiny explorer in a vast new world. "Do you like it, buddy?" Owen asked, a lump in his throat. "It's awesome," Leo declared, his face alight. "Dad, do I really get my own room?" The word dad still sent a jolt of pure joy through Owen. He dreamed of this moment for so long. "You bet, Leo, the best room in the house. Want to see it right now?" "Yeah." Leo grabbed Owen's hand, tugging him forward. "You two go on ahead," Mia said, a tentative smile gracing her lips. "I'll just start unpacking a few things here." She watched them disappear down the long hallway, Owen's large hand engulfing Leo's small one, a strange warmth spreading through her. Owen led Leo to a door adorned with a brightly painted wooden sign, "Leo's Room." "Wow!" Leo's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "Is this really all mine?" "All yours, buddy," Owen confirmed, ruffling his hair. "You can do whatever you want in here." Leo pushed the door open and gasped. The room was everything a little boy could dream of. The race car bed, shelves brimming with toys and books, the cool desk by the window. This is the bestest thing ever." He scrambled onto the bed, bouncing with delight. Owen sat beside him, his heart swelling as he watched Leo's unbridled happiness. "We're gonna be a real family now, right, Dad?" Leo asked quietly, his bouncing subsiding, his eyes earnest. "Yeah, buddy," Owen said, pulling his son into a fierce hug. "We're going to be a great family. The best." When they came downstairs later, Mia was sitting in the living room, a half-empty teacup in her hands, looking small and overwhelmed amidst the grandeur. Owen sat beside her. "Thank you, Owen, for all of this," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Mia," he began, taking her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "I want you to know you'll never be alone again, neither of you. You and Leo, you're my family now, my everything." Her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He squeezed her hand. "I've dreamed of this moment, Mia, of having you back, of having a family with you," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "Me too," she whispered, leaning into him, her eyes finally shining with a light he hadn't seen in years. Their lips met in a tender, lingering kiss. A kiss that spoke of forgiveness, of second chances, of a love that had endured unimaginable trials, and of a future that, against all odds, finally gleamed with hope.